entry intake is on the left-hand side over here. If I click on that, now it's going to go ahead and start the intake process for the coordinated entry system. And so I'm going to go ahead and add a new client. And so as we're walking through here, you guys will be able to see kind of the data that's collected. So, you know, what's required, those types of things. You'll be able to see all of that. Let's see. So I'll enter myself as a, this isn't real information. That isn't my social security number. So the system right away was looking for duplicates in the system. So if there happened to be another Denise Albertson in the system or the same social security number, the system will pop that up for us so that it'll say, is this by chance the same person? And that tries to help us so that we don't get a lot of duplicated files in here. So as we go through here, you'll see there's red asterisks as we go through here. So this is the required information and the required data elements. And we do have required data elements that are given to us by HUD, and we will have to, by October 1st, our system will be updated with some of the data standard updates that HUD put out this year. And then we'll have to start submitting APRs for our coordinated entry system also. And that'll happen next year in 2021. But just so everybody knows, anytime you see a red asterisk, that's a data element that's required by HUD to be in the system. And you can see since I entered a full date of birth, the system automatically checks that this is a full date of birth that was reported. Ethnicity, and again, even the stuff that's in the drop down. So our ethnicity, our race, these are all things that are set by HUD in the system. And we do have the option when we go to race, we can check 3, 4, we can check them all. We can, if the client refuses to give you the information, you can click client refused. And it's the same with their ethnicity. If they just don't want to give it to you, they don't have to. Client refused is one of those options available in the system. And then also gender. And this list was just updated. I know some new data elements had come out. I think gender nonconforming is one of the newest ones that was added to this. And if we check female, as you see here, when I check female, then another box pops up asking for pregnancy status. And if you click yes to that, then another box pops up for the due date. So the system really is pretty intuitive to when one question is answered, if there's other things that need to be answered, it will bring that up for you too. And then veteran status also, so it asks us that question. And when we get to kind of the contact information for the client, so the address, what was decided with our COC for the address, what we put in here is where the client is currently sleeping. So if the client is sleeping in their vehicle, if the client is sleeping in a shelter, we've gotten into the habit of putting the name of the shelter here. And again, if it's vehicle, we just write the word vehicle here. If they happen to be sleeping in their car outside in the park. So this address is not necessarily the physical address, but where they're sleeping. And you'll kind of see this will tie back to when we get back to the wait list. This comes up on the wait list. So having that information there is really helpful maybe to somebody that doesn't know this address is Bishop Dudley in Sioux Falls, or, you know, a certain address is a certain, it's just really a much quicker way for us all to know exactly where the person is sleeping. And we're going to say that this person is in Sioux Falls. So as you can see here, once I type in Sioux Falls, it gives us all the different zip codes and everything for Sioux Falls. And so region is one of the things that we added specific to our coordinated entry system. And that is because a couple years ago when we were designing our coordinated entry system, we split the state into the 4 regions and we followed the counties that the CAP agencies follow. So Sioux Falls is in region 4. So I would pick region 4. Region 1 is our western part of the state. So out in Pennington and Lawrence County, and it's a really large definitely a large region. Region 2 is the North Central region. Region 3 is South Central. And then Region 4 is the eastern part of our state. And here you can put in if the person does have some, we've noticed with coordinated entry, sometimes people, the best way to get a hold of them is through email. So you can put their email in here, you can put their phone number in here, you can put a message phone, you can, any way that we can get a hold of them. Whatever information they're willing to give us of easiest ways to get a hold of them, that's what we should put in here. And then the system fills out this information for us. The person that you're entering first would be considered the head of household. So it's going to answer self here because that's the person that you're entering in the system. And it auto-populates today's date in there. And then here, and one of these, the interested others was added not too terribly long ago, but this gives us the option to add in here if there's maybe a message phone, or if they say, well, you can get a hold of me through my sister or my mom. Or the other thing that we added here is if there's maybe a caseworker or somebody that they already, a case manager, caseworker that they already work with, we have the option to put that person's name here. And so again, it just goes back to just another way to get a hold of them. So we can add that information here. And then part of this is we do a verbal release of information with the client. So we would read the release of information to them that they're agreeing to have their information discussed amongst the people that are providing services and the housing providers and everybody at our case conferencing meetings. And so we check this, that yes, they agree, we've read it to them. And then it auto-populates who's doing the intake, the date. And then I would just put my signature in here because I'm the one that read the above statement to the client. And we click finish. And the system is really pretty friendly to use. You click finish, you click enter, save. As you go through the pages, it's just going to keep going through the system until we get to a finish here. And so family members, so this is where you would add anybody who is part of this household. And so I'm going to add a child, and maybe the child is not living with me right now in my car, but I want to add them because they are part of my household. And then I'll show you when we move on that we can make them part of the household, but maybe not part of this current enrollment right now. So we'll say, so right away when I do this, the system now goes out to make sure there's nobody else with that name already in the system. And it didn't find anybody. If there was anybody else, that would come up in this box down here. So I can just click out of that and come back to the screen, and now it's going to ask me for information on the child that I'm entering. And again, as I tab over, you can see it auto-filled in full date of birth. We're going to say this is a male. I'm just going to type some numbers for a Social Security. And you can see as I tabbed over, once I entered a full Social Security, this box disappeared because it knows it's a full number. We're going to say this is a son. And so here, if they have a different race, you would just go in here, you can uncheck, check whichever boxes apply, and then if you just click the green box, it'll change it to the things that I just changed that race to. And we'll say that the ethnicity is the same. And so you can add in here as many household members as you need to. As soon as you click one, it'll just add another empty box underneath it so that you can keep adding. And once you've entered all the members, you can click Save and Close. And so now it's telling me this is the date of the screening, which again, it's going to auto-populate today's date because most times we're entering these, we're going over this information with somebody on the phone, and it's really a live entry. We're doing everything at the current time. So my current living situation, if you remember earlier, I put that I was living in a vehicle as my address. So the correct answer for that is going to be place not meant for habitation. And you can see there's other things on here, and we'll get in as soon as we kind of go through this. We can come back in and play a little bit because as of right now in our coordinated entry system, this is for those that are literally homeless by HUD's definition. So we'll kind of go back in here and we'll have a chance to kind of look around. And if I click on that they're in a rental, kind of what the system does and the different answers. But we'll get through this so we have a full intake done before we kind of go back. And so the other part of our coordinated entry is it's going to ask us if there's anybody else that we could stay with for a week or longer. Now, if I click yes to this, it's going to bring up all that information. So this kind of goes into diversion and rapid resolution and kind of some of those other pieces that we're going to hear about too, kind of in some of our other sessions. Now, if I click no, there's nothing else that comes up for us. So I'm going to click no, that I'm in my car and there's nobody else I can go stay with. And I click save. So the other two pieces of diversion that we added into our coordinated entry system was a domestic violence referral. And then also after this, you'll see we'll have a Veterans Administration referral. And so if I were to click yes here, it's going to bring up the 800, the statewide South Dakota number, and then it's going to divert us out of the system. So for purposes of working with this today, I'm just going to click no. Oh, and I didn't mark that I was a veteran, so that's why it didn't ask me for the veteran one. I'm sorry. So now it's asking me what program I want to enroll this person in. And again, we're working in coordinated entry, and ours is a CES program. In the live system, both of these options aren't out here, just so everybody knows. And so now it brings up the household people I entered. So if right now I am the only person in my household, let's say that my son is in CPS custody or something, and we're just not sure that he's going to be able to come back into my household even after I am permanently housed. So at this time, I would just put a check mark next to Denise's name because she is the only person that we're working with right now because we're not sure if the child is going to come back into the household. Now, if that wasn't the case and all of the members that we listed in this person's household are all together and they're all coming into coordinated entry together, we would just put a check mark next to anybody who's here. And then I click save. And so now we get into the universal data assessment. So this is where it's going to start to ask us how many times homeless in the last 3 years, how long we've been in our current situation. And some of those, all of this information ties into the SPDAT, which ties into kind of what our housing match is going to be. So here I'm going to mark, for purposes of this, I'm going to mark that yes, there is a disabling condition. The client location, which is our COC, that auto-populates in the system for you. My prior living situation. So it kind of explains to you right here too. The night before, so where I'm sleeping, currently sleeping. Again, was in my vehicle, so we're going to mark a place not meant for habitation. How long have I been in that situation? We're going to say I've been there a week or more. So again, then it just has you pick the date. Regardless of where they stayed last night, number of times the client has been on the streets, in emergency shelter, or safe haven in the past 3 years, including today. So we know for sure I have one time because that's the current time that I'm in. Let's say there's been a few other times I've been homeless over the past 3 years. Total number of months homeless, on the streets, in emergency shelter, safe haven in the past. So for these 3 times I was homeless, how many months does that accumulate to? So we'll say 11 months. Health insurance, and a lot of times, when we ask the question, some people know right offhand, oh yeah, I'm covered under Medicaid or Medicare. They can again refuse, say no. If I say no, the thing to remember here is if they say, yep, I have insurance, and I don't mark anything here, and I try to move on, the system is going to stop me and say there was a response to health insurance, but I don't have anything marked. So with any of those things that are red asterisk, if we leave those blank or we answer one question and a second question pops up that's also red asterisk and we don't answer it, the system's going to stop us. And so now we're at the barriers. And you can see here, this question is kind of highlighted for disabling condition here because I marked yes on the previous screen. So if I click this box right here, it puts no into all these barriers. And if I click save and close, the system is going to say, you need to address the following. So what this is telling me is I have yes to a disabling condition, but I didn't mark yes to anything here. So what is the person's disabling condition? So we can say whatever it may be. And as soon as I click yes on mental health, then another box pops up here. And it also has boxes here that are free typing boxes. So you can put if the person has mental illness, if they're bipolar, if they're whatever information they're willing to share with you really at this point would be, if they give it to you, you can put it in there. And now if I click save and close, it's going to go ahead and let me move on because I do have now a barrier marked with my disabling condition. So here's a domestic violence screening. Again, questions lead to questions. If I click yes to this, this is going to pop up and say, when did this incident occur? And am I currently fleeing? If I mark no to this, then it just lets me move on. And so now we get to part of the assessment that our COC decided on was the VI SPDAT for our vulnerability assessment. And so this system has the single SPDAT, it has the family SPDAT, and it has the TAY, which is our transitional age youth SPDAT built into it. And so right here, this red box, this red wording right here will tell you the recommended SPDAT that you should fill out for this household. Now, if I had entered a child with me, made him part of my program, remember, when I didn't check his box, then it would ask me to do a family SPDAT. So whenever it's a single person, it's just going to say, it'll tell you to do this VI SPDAT. If I was a transitional age youth in that age group, then it would say to do the TAY SPDAT. Any questions or comments so far from anybody? Feel free to, if you have questions when we're on a screen or discussion, or we can wait till the end too if you guys want me to go back and look at something. Or
Hey, Denise.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that we're a whole set of videos is being created in a video library that will be posted on on YouTube channel. That is part of our HMIS NOFA. That will have a whole set of videos that will be training videos. And so similar to what you're seeing, the Denise is demonstrating today, we're working on a whole set of videos with Ecovia that will be available so that if you have a particular question about a particular topic in HMIS, for instance, right, the CES workflow, you'll be able to navigate to that site and see 10 or 15 or however long, there'll be different lengths, right, of videos on different subjects. So I just want to interject that. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely, for sure. And we are recording this session too. I know Davis popped that into the chat box for anybody who, I know some people might be listening and they're not getting the full effect of what we're going through here. So if they're just on the phone and not through the Skype, but we will post this recording also. So now we're into the VI SPDAT. And so here it auto-populates the date again, the interviewer's name. We can answer any of these other questions as we go through. If there's not a red asterisk, that means that it's not required. Auto-populates the age. And what language do you feel best to express yourself? We have had some people come into the system where I know in case notes it's talked about that the household needs a translator and stuff like that. So those are important pieces of information to put in there. So when the regional group is talking about that case, they know right up front that we need to have an interpreter present when we're going to be working with that household. And I'm sure maybe some of you are already all familiar with the VI SPDAT. These are created by org code. These are not questions that we put in here. We do not manipulate, change the questions, change access to different answers. We don't have access to do any of that. Org code owns it, and our HMIS vendor, who's Ecovia Solutions, has purchased this to have available in their system. Um, so I'm going to choose for this household outdoors because I was sleeping in my car. Again, how long have you, has it been since you had permanent housing? I'm just going to kind of quickly go through some of these um, questions. There's a lot of questions in the VI SPDAT. And the VI SPDAT is important, the best that we can, to either phrase the questions differently. If we know in conversation that we're having with people, I know Desta kind of talked about this when we did the HMIS 101 training. As you're kind of, and I've noticed this when people have called in to ask for assistance to our office too, is as you're jotting down notes and listening to them, sometimes they're giving you some of this information too, just in conversation that they're sharing with you. So you might have answers to some of these questions, or like I said, need to phrase them differently, or we got to meet clients where they are. So it also might be the case that maybe we can't get through a lot of these questions at the moment that we're talking to them. It's going to need a follow-up call, or we need maybe if they're talking to Madeline through the helpline center, our 800 number, maybe it's that a caseworker or a case manager really needs to make a contact with this person, because maybe Madeline's not getting a lot of answers to a lot of these questions. So we're not getting really a true score for that household. And if that's the case, I think we just need to make sure that we're reaching out to a case manager in the region that person's in to see if maybe somebody can make a warmer contact with them, or a follow-up contact to maybe get more information. And I think some of those discussions too we'll be having in some of our regional sessions that are tomorrow too, to kind of, once people are on the list, making sure we're contacting them in some way. One of the agencies in that region is making contact with them. So I'm just gonna go through again and answer some of these. Have you been attacked or beaten up? And again, I don't know, Davis, if we want to go through every single question that's in the SPDAT at this point, if we want to, if people are familiar with the SPDAT enough that we can, if anybody has, I guess, comment, question, please.
Yeah, does anyone who works on the SPDAT have anything that they'd like to share comment-wise that are doing assessments? Is there anything you'd like to interject at this point while we have it up on the screen? Any questions or comments?
And I know, like, this question in particular, is there any person, past landlord, business, bookie, dealer, government group like the IRS that thinks you owe them money? Rephrasing that even to, do you owe anybody rental arrears? Do you owe utility company for any past utilities? Just kind of breaking that, reading maybe some of these word for word, because sometimes how they're written is, So I think using our best judgment. A lot of you guys are case managers and work with the population on a daily basis. So you would know better than any of myself or Davis probably how to phrase some of these. So
Denise, this is Joe at Pathways.
yeah.
I know one of the questions that was confusing at first and ambiguous, especially on the family one, is the one at the bottom, number 13 there, and it would say, is everybody in the family currently able to take care of basic needs? And it was confusing for a while when you have young children in the family, if that would be a yes or a no.
Oh, sure. Makes sense. And so this is a guess here, but I'm guessing is that the adults are able to, I guess, give everybody a bath or get everybody to a shower somewhere, or is that kind of what the basis of the...
Well, and I think when we discussed it in our regions, we basically said as long as there's as long as there's an adult, or nobody, maybe if one of the childs has a particular special need, then that would be a no. But
Okay. No, thank you. That makes sense. And I think even this one, number 12, do you have planned activities other than just surviving that make you feel happy and fulfilled? So maybe, do you guys go to the park together? Do you go to the library? Do you, some things like instead of reading other than just surviving,
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a lot of conversation that goes on, nationally about the VI SPDAT and its appropriateness and the language, and we know it's not a
absolutely.
perfect tool, but it's being widely used across the country, right or wrong. It was an option that was out there when we developed the system, and so it was sort of what we were comfortable with and knew that other folks were using it, but we know there's a lot of concerns with it, and culturally too, some of the language, like with our earlier presentation with Leon too, about just, the culturalness of some of these questions. You wonder, that kind of like what Denise talked about, are folks understanding what we're asking? Are we really getting a clear measure? And it's definitely things that we're concerned about.
And maybe too, Madeline. I think Madeline's on the call too. She's probably the person who puts in more assessments than anybody else on our call. So Madeline, feel free if you have any advice or any, just anything to interject as we're kind of going through, especially with the SPDAT, because how you maybe have found ways to better read the questions or better kind of put the question out there to people that is more easily understood for.
I actually do this, Madeline.
Mm-hmm.
Actually have the one question that I think is really confusing for a lot of people is when I ask if they're in, if they have any legal issues going on. And it's usually, they'll tell me no, but then I ask if they're on probation or parole or have past felony convictions, or I notice that question a lot is usually changed to yes. I mean, in certain situations.
Okay.
Then
no, that's helpful.
The question is, I think they mean they're thinking as current legal issues, not past or
Sure.
Probation isn't considered, those types of things.
Yeah, that's great advice. And as you can see then when we get down here, so that gives us a total score. And we came up with the, hello?
No, I'm just listening to this.
We came up as the COC when we did our planning a couple years ago, the score. So if they score a 0 to 3, there's no housing intervention. If they score a 4 to 7, the assessment is for rapid rehousing. And if they score over an 8 or over, then it's permanent supportive housing first. So you can see here that the score for this person was 7. And again, there's other things you can put down here, how to get a hold of them. Most of this would have been answered in those previous screens where we could put down their phone number and everything. So if we click save at this point, so now you can see the SPDAT is here. Again, we have a score total of 7, so we can continue on through our assessment now. The other thing that we built into our coordinated entry, because we know a lot of times the homeless population definitely has, they lose a birth certificate, driver's license, social security number. Those were kind of the big items we thought about when we were doing all of our planning. If there's other things, again, with this system, this is definitely what this annual training is for. Are there things we should be adding to the intake? Are there things we don't think need to be part of the intake? Are there, and this is definitely kind of this document list is one of those. So if a case manager has been working with somebody for a long time and they've had to help them replace their driver's license 10 times or something, maybe it would be a good idea to get their driver's license and, upload a copy of their driver's license into the system so that it's always in there. So those are options that we have in our system. Excuse me. Okay. And if we do a save and close here, and now you can see we get to the end and it says finish. So that means we've gone through all of the workflow and all the assessment. It takes us back to our dashboard of the client that we just entered. So you can see up here, we do the client's kind of personal information is at the top of the screen. Their age, if they're a veteran, if they have a disabling condition. So again, these things are easy for us to see at a glance. And this is the important information when we are having our regional meetings. I know we look at this a lot in our regional calls, the couple of regions that I'm part of for sure. Their phone numbers here. The thing that I was going to maybe see is if they do have a email instead of a phone number listed, making sure that that email pops up here too, so we just don't think there's no way to get a hold of the person. I've noticed that in a couple of the clients we've come across in some of our region meetings that there's not a phone number, so we're like, oh, there's no way to get a hold of anybody, and maybe they don't have a case manager or a message phone or anybody listed here. So I'm going to see if maybe having that email pop up too, so that, because there are some of our clients I've noticed that do have an email address listed, but no phone number. And as we scroll down, you can see this is their enrollment. So this is the coordinated entry program we just put them into. So the other important thing to do as soon as you've enrolled somebody is to enter a case note for that person. And that first case note is really important as far as what is happening, why are they on here, really any information we can get that our regional team will find important to know when it comes to this household being discussed. So here I would put currently living in her vehicle. She does work with case manager Davis Schofield. And most times I know Madeline is really, really good about if they're working, if they're not working, if maybe they're getting disability, if they're any of that kind of information is important here to list because it really gives kind of a starting point when we're referring them. If we know maybe there's an agency they've already worked with, that's an easy referral or, anything like that. So. So we just click save. So when we go to that, and I'm sorry, I did go, and please stop me if I go through something too fast. I apologize. So on the person's dashboard, you can see the case notes. If we click on that, it will take us to the screen. And this is where you just add a new case note. So if I went through that too fast for anybody, I'm sorry. And if I just click cancel, it'll just take me right back to their dashboard. So I know a lot of times we're in our case conferencing meetings and we're like, oh, they have a disabling condition. I wonder what that would be. So here you can go over to this is called an action wheel next to that enrollment. And if you look at their entry assessments, no, they're not. And the training site is not up here. I'm sorry. They would be listed here and you could click on barriers and go to that barrier and it would show you that you can read what their disabling condition is then, instead of having to try and go back through the workflow to see it. Sorry, I gotta make a note about that. I thought that was fixed.
Denise, is that an item that just wasn't in the training site, but is in the live?
It is, yep, it's in the live site, yep. Sorry about that. And you can see here too, over on the side, if we click this box, this white box with the 3 black lines. So this gives all of kind of where we can go, what we can do with this client. And if you click the little push pin here, it will keep this open, even when I click back over here. So I know a lot of times people that are new to HMIS or just not familiar with working in the system, they pin that for a while until they get used to kind of going back and forth between the screens and all that information. So over here, we can go into here, we can edit the client if maybe we put something in wrong. Or they say, oh, I have a different phone number now. If we go in and edit the client, we can change the phone number. Maybe they added an email. The other part of this that get used that I use probably the most often is their location changes. So maybe we find out that they're staying in a shelter. So here I can change this to like Bishop Dudley or to Union Gospel or something like that. And then I click save and it will update where their location is. So that's a real quick, easy way to go in and edit any of that client information that maybe isn't correct or has been updated. I know we have phone numbers change a lot. That's probably another thing that we update most often. And you can see here, so one of the other things I know that has happened is if it is maybe a single household that now has either a partner or maybe the kids are back in custody. So from here, we could go in and do a new SPDAT for them. We could do a family SPDAT or, so you would just click on it and it'll take you right through the family SPDAT at that point. And speaking of that, so if we needed to add a household member, maybe my son is maybe back in my custody now from here. So we could do add a family member. If we do view case members, I'm going to be the only person that shows up here. So you can see that. So here it's going to take me, if I do add a family member, so these are the original people that I had entered. If I do a save and close, and now it's taking me back to that enrollment page. So it's going to ask, he doesn't have a check mark. So right here, I would just check his name and do save. And now it's going to add Josh, that child, into my household for the coordinated entry. So it's going to ask a few questions specifically about Josh, about the child. Does Josh have a disabling condition? Is he covered by insurance? And again, this is a child, so it's not going to ask for veteran, we don't need to worry about any of that. Does Josh have any barriers? And I did click no for disabling condition, so unless there's something else going on with him that you want to note here. And again, if we want to upload his birth certificate or any of those kinds of things, we have access to be able to do that for Josh. And so now you can see it took me back to the head of household, which was myself. And now my case members is 2, because now I have myself and my son are both listed together in the coordinated entry system.
Denise, we do have a couple questions in the chat. Is there a way that we can see if they have been in an ESG program in another region?
Yep, if they've been in coordinated entry, you would see that. So their name would pop up. So at that very beginning when we're doing, so one of the things I know, one of the best practices for people is you can click this magnifying glass right here. This is kind of our search icon. So you can search for the person and this will search the whole coordinated entry system. If they've maybe been in the system 2 years ago, if they've been in the system 6 months ago, whatever the case may be. So and you can put just a few letters, you can put just a couple letters. Ooh, Denise Albertson has been in the coordinated entry system a lot. So that will pop up for us. So you can do that search. And if I were to click this, again, you might have to click because hopefully these are not all. So you can see 720, this is the one that we just entered. So you can see that that's the person that's, but if let's click on one of those older ones. Oh, so there the person was in SHIP. And so you guys might not, because not everyone, I have access to as the administrator all of the programs and all of the organizations in the system. But for you guys that work with coordinated entry, if the person has been in coordinated entry before, you would have access to their information that was in coordinated entry before. So if I was an agency who didn't have access to SHIP, like this is Southeastern SHIP program here, it looks like this would come up, this screen would come up, but the enrollment section, you wouldn't see what's there. So I know that's one of the other things that's being updated in our system is that we would be able to at least see the enrollment they were in before. We won't see their case notes, we won't see any of that information, but we would see the enrollment that they had previously been into. So that'll be one of the things I know that's being updated in our system as we kind of work through this. What else do we have in the chat box?
Mary Ann had asked about homeless verification form, and I would imagine for Cornerstone Apartments is probably what she's asking that question about. Can I send the homeless verification to who did the assessment to fill out the homeless verification? I imagine that's for that program.
Most times the homeless verification would need to be filled out, like if they're in a shelter, would be filled out by the person, by somebody, a staff from the shelter that they're in. Marianne, you can feel free to unmute yourself too if you want to. But if somebody's living in their vehicle or something, that homeless certification would be completed by you probably. It would be more of like a self-declaration homeless certification. So I know with like some of my ESG agencies, I'll see when they do somebody's living in their vehicle that they've put in case notes that they went out and looked in their vehicle and saw obvious signs that they were living in their vehicle, pillows and blankets and stuff like that. So they did that verification themselves. But if somebody's at a shelter, then the shelter staff would need to do that homeless verification for you.
And then we had another question. Do DV agencies have access to this search information as well?
So for our domestic violence agencies, you guys are prohibited by VAWA from being in this HMIS system. That's why you guys have your separate secured module that you enter your data into. So you guys are actually, it's a prohibited by VAWA completely from being in HMIS. And even within your guys' own secure model, you guys can't even search to see if they've gotten services from another domestic violence agency that's also in that module, because you guys are locked down by agency. You can't share information across your agencies.
Yep.
But you can always contact me, because I can look in the system to see if they've gotten service. I just did that not too long ago for a domestic violence agency that was working on helping somebody with ESG, to see if the person had gotten ESG services before. And most times, I can be real honest with you, that person was pretty upfront with the agency and said, well, I think I got ESG assistance before. And they had. So in some circumstances, they might not say something. So it's always a good, have you ever received, assistance from the Emergency Solutions Grant Program or another housing program, might be the way to broach that. Okay, and Marianne said, yes, it is the person that's living in their car. So Marianne, you can do that homeless certification by looking in their vehicle or, just doing a visual of their circumstances.
I can go ahead and read one to you. If a client has a document in HMIS and it is needed to enter a case management program, can this document be requested?
I would think so. I mean, at this point, we haven't put any documents in our coordinated entry system.
It's not I'm sorry. It's not something that's really been utilized yet much, has it?
Well, again, if we go back to the majority of our coordinated entry assessments that are being done by Madeline over the phone, that makes that process a little harder because they can't just hand Madeline a document that she uploads into the system. So it might come down to, once they start working with the agency, then the agency has that, but then they necessarily aren't still in coordinated entry. So I think that's going to come in more to play if we have some of our physical access points that are sitting down face to face with somebody and they're going through this assessment and they say, oh yeah, I have a copy of my birth certificate right here, that they can scan it and put in the system. So we built it into our system thinking that, and it might still at some point be, I know where technology is getting better and increasing all the time to where you can carry around scanners and you can scan a document standing there sometimes with people, so I would imagine as we kind of get further and further in this process, maybe that will be used more, but at this point it just hasn't. And again, because Madeline's doing a lot of those over the phone, so.
And we're speaking about coordinated entry. I imagine if this conversation was on a direction of general HMIS and individual agencies,
right,
having documents and things, then that's a little bit different conversation.
Right.
If that makes sense, but because we're really specifically looking at coordinated entry and what's in there right now. But individual agencies may have documents that they could share, and that would require, I'm sure, a release to that individual agency, right, Denise? That makes sense.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I mean, every agency outside of, this coordinated entry conversation, I mean, your regular releases of information and all of those things would come into play when you're working between your agencies for other programs. So, okay. Any other questions as far as the assessment or kind of the dashboard? There's some other stuff I want to definitely get into with coordinated entry here. And I know referrals are another big part of coordinated entry. They're actually one of our main components of coordinated entry. So a lot of times you'll maybe be on the receiving end of referral. So for the referrals, again, on that left-hand side of our screen, if we click this box, we'll see our referrals is right here. So if we just click on it, we go to a referral screen. I'm going to add a new referral. And so from here, you can see it auto-populates the date, what are we referring? And we have a coordinated entry referral, which when we very kind of first started our system live, that was really our catch-all to anytime we're referring out of coordinated entry. We do have the availability to do all of these different types of referral out of our coordinated entry system. So if the two that I would say are used absolutely the most is just a general coordinated entry referral. And then also I've started using the referral to a rapid rehousing project because a lot of our, well, all of our ESG funded and COC funded rapid rehousing programs are required to get their clients from the coordinated entry system. So that's probably, those two are probably the biggest ones that we use. And I would say really kind of our program still being, we're almost 2 years into it, but still kind of growing, changing, our system is once we really would get into, I think, a more full-blown system, if we need to refer somebody to a legal service or we need to refer somebody to shelter or something like that, we'd get into those that would open up maybe some of these other things. And my person was listed in Sioux Falls, so I'm going to use Interlakes as my, so I just kind of started typing in INTER in here and it auto-populated. So you'll kind of see, and again, I think a lot of the referrals are happening from Davis and I at this point. But I want you guys to see kind of what this referral looks like on our end and how we do referrals, because I do think as we continue to grow and continue to build and continue to expand our coordinated entry system, a lot of some of these referrals may be happening right within the region, whether it's from the regional coordinator, stuff like that. I mean, I think that we all need to be well versed in how the referrals work so that we can make that work quicker in our regions when we need to. So, and you can see a lot of these are auto-populated here. So the status is I'm making the referral, so I'm going to leave that as referral. The enrollment, I'm going to tie it to our current open coordinated entry enrollment that I just entered this person in. So I click next here. And so through this system, we can send an email right out of this system. So I'm going to click email authorize, and then you'll see kind of when we get to the end that an email pops right up for me right out of this system. And truly, we can click this too because they signed off on the ROI. We read that to them when they entered the system. So here, date acknowledged, appointment date, result date. So these are all things that are going to be answered by the person that is receiving the referral. So at this point, I'm just going to put in here that the referral is made, and I'm sending the referral to ICAP. And what I've gotten in the habit of doing is just putting in parentheses who I'm sending that referral to, just so people are aware. So Tammy, I'm going to send this to you through email. You'll see it. I'll just do it a test one. And here, if I click finish, and now you'll see an email box will pop up for me. So here I can just put in Tammy's email, and I might put in here to their Heartland House program. And then I'll usually kind of put that down in this box too. And then I always sign my name here so they know. And then I just click send. So that email is going to go to Tammy. And then when I go back to this, to the person's dashboard, now when we go to the wait list and look at this person, you'll see that it says referral made next to this person's name. So that's all handled. And I would also enter a case note that tells us that I did a referral. And that would just simply be per email sent a referral to Heartland House. And I would save it. And the nice thing too is we added their case notes. So everything is right on the dashboard. So we can see that right on the dashboard for people. And I really, in that regarding box, try to make it pretty clear what's in the basis of that case note. So I don't have, it doesn't just say CES something here. I know this case note has to do with a referral to ICAP for this person. So, and when Tammy gets that on her end, then she's gonna, the case manager who receives it would go in, they can pull up this system and look at it. They would go to this person and they're gonna click on this, is the edit the referral. And I know we've sent documentation out kind of what the different statuses mean for our outcome of that referral. So the first thing that somebody should do is they should acknowledge that they got it. And that, and I know Davis will probably go into more of all of those, like they have so many days to acknowledge the referral, so many days to, I think we'll get into that more when we're talking about all of the manual and all that stuff. I think that might be our next session.
Yep, we'll talk about that, those kinds of issues more then too.
And so here, then they would go in. So the first thing you're going to do is acknowledge it. And it would just be putting that date in and clicking finish. So what that does then is on the wait list changes that where instead of saying, actually, why don't I do that so we can look at the, I'll leave this. Let's take this out. So let's go to the wait list. I'm sorry, I'm going to go. So back to home on this little box, if we go to the wait list. And if you remember, I put this person in Sioux Falls. So I'm going to actually just pull up region 4 because I want to just specifically look for this person. And we can see Denise Albertson. So we can see right here in the latest referral result that it says referral made right here. So now if I pop over and I'm going to go in, so Tammy received this, the case manager received this, they're going to go in and go, oh, yep, I acknowledge that I got this. And I'm going to click finish, which is save in this case. And now if I go back over to that person and refresh my screen here, now you'll see it's changed to acknowledged over here. So as they kind of work through the process, we know none of this happens on the same day, but it's important to make sure we're kind of updating, because at a glance now I can see, oh, yep, they got my email, they acknowledged it. So I know the referral is in the process. So we'll update it as things happen. And we do have some
Someone had called
documents.
and asked if y'all were going to go out and explore the river today, or
Roger, I think we can hear you.
should we call them and talk, see what's going to happen?
I think that's Roger, isn't it? Roger, you need to mute yourself. And so I know we sent out kind of some documentation that kind of gives the referral made, means that the referral has been made to an agency. Acknowledged means that the agency received the referral, so they're making it known that they got that email from us. The information only is maybe once you've scheduled an appointment. So you've acknowledged it, and now you've contacted the client, had that conversation with them. So you'd update that referral to information only with the date of what that is. And then there's also, we get to the point where the service is provided, maybe the referral's rejected, the person no-showed the appointment. All of those options are in there for us to choose from. So
And those are
whatever's happening.
the choices that the receiving programs reply with.
Yep. So if I go back in here and look, you'll see all those right here. Acknowledged, information only, no show, rejected, service provided. So all of those are right here for us to choose from.
And Denise, you mentioned earlier, we asked that receiving programs reply within 2 days.
Okay.
To acknowledge, so that we know, because 2 business days, right? That way, because it's a way to keep the system moving. Last thing we want is to have referrals out there that aren't occurring, or folks didn't realize it was sent and that kind of thing. This is a way for us to track it and keep the system moving.
And you can kind of see too, Tammy, thank you, Tammy, for doing that. She put in the chat box that this is the email that she got from me. This email is to inform you that Denise Albertson has been referred to your organization Heartland House program. So then that's what the email looks like on your end that you get from me. So we just thought that was an important piece. The referral process really is one of the 4 main components of a coordinated entry system. So we just thought it would be important to go through that referral process with everybody. So my next segment, I'm gonna kind of go into the wait list so we can talk about that. So is there any more questions or any comments kind of about the client dashboard, the options that we have, how we go in and edit stuff, any of that information? I do know one of the things that we've actually started using, seems like a little bit recently, is when you hover over this edit client, there's an alias history that you can go into. And so here you could put in here if somebody goes by a different name. Maybe sometimes I go by Denny Smith, so you can actually save those in here, because I know in one of our regions, I think with the conversation we had with all the providers at one of our calls, I think we have 5 different names that the same person goes by. So I was able to go into the system and I could add all of those different aliases in here for this person. So just kind of, I think new things kind of pop up and start to happen now and then as we're all kind of working through this. But just so everybody knows, if somebody does go by a different name, you can put that alias in there. And now you can see, since I did add an alias, that it's highlighted yellow. So that would be another way to say, I wonder if this is the person that goes by Denny Albertson. Like if I hover over this, I see that this is highlighted yellow, so that tells me there is an alias name in there. So if I click on it, I could see that. Or you agencies that kind of work in this system a lot and kind of have worked with coordinated entry, if there's anything you think would be important to show, anything that I missed, anything, please feel free to pipe in, and if you want me to go to something or show somebody something, I'm happy to do that. Okay, well, hearing none, seeing none. So now I'm going to pop back over to the home screen. And we're going to talk about the wait list. So right now I don't have any regions clicked or nothing, so I'm just going to show you this is what the wait list looks like for all of the regions together. And again, we're in the training site. This isn't real information. This is all fake. So currently right now on our training site, we have 134 people that are currently active in our coordinated entry system. And so this also has been something that's probably had the most changes, I would say, over the last several months. Because you really don't know what information you need, what information is helpful at a glance until you're really working in the system, until those regions are having those regional calls and those regional meetings, and you're like, oh, it would be really nice to see that on the home screen if I can, So we've added, I know most recently the two columns that were added were the domestic violence and the veteran status column. Because truly with even though somebody might want the Veterans Administration number when we were going through the assessment, they might still want to be on coordinated entry. So we can now go through here and say, oh, this person's a veteran, anybody who's marked yes with a veteran, and we can get those names to the SSVF program or the VA or GPD, or, we can really reach out to those veteran service agencies and say, these people are on our coordinated entry wait list. Can I send a referral to you or send their name and number to you so that you can reach out to them about a veterans service program. The domestic violence was added. We have an agency that now has a new COC program that is a domestic violence rapid rehousing program. I think also because of the fact that we have a lot of domestic violence agencies across the state that are ESG subrecipients. So I think it is nice to have that information available to us at a glance. So if we do have somebody with that domestic violence background, we can reach out to our domestic violence agencies, the network, whoever across the state to make referrals to them for those people that have that in their background. So we have their name, the score is what they scored on their VI SPDAT when we went through that assessment. Latest referral result again, and we always know if an agency hasn't maybe looked at the referral or maybe the email didn't get to them, because if this says referral made here for a long time, we know we'll usually reach back out to the agency and say, hey, I sent a referral to you on this date. Have you guys had a chance to, talk to this person or reach out to this person? And sometimes they haven't. It's a matter of they just forgot to go in and update that referral status. So, it's just a reminder thing. I know between Davis and myself, we're kind of, I don't know if policing is the right word, but we're reviewing the system a lot just to make sure that we're staying caught up, and because our regions all have a different schedule of when they meet, when their calls are and those things. So we just try to make sure that the information is really staying up to date. And then here you'll see this is the date of their entry, how many household members are in their coordinated entry program, the domestic violence, the veteran status, what region they're in, if they're chronically homeless. And again, this is determined by the answers that they gave you in where we asked them how many times homeless they'd been in the last 3 years. So that's where this chronic home determination is made, where there's nowhere in there that you mark yes, they're chronic or no, they're not. The system calculates this based on the answers that are given. And then the subpopulation goes by what VI SPDAT you completed. So if it was a single SPDAT, if it was a family SPDAT, or if it was a TAY. So that's what information is populated in this column. And then the housing match is based on that score. So if they were 0 to 3, there'll be none for a housing match. If they're 4 to 7, they're matched to rapid rehousing, which would be our people down here under 7. And if they're 8 plus, then they're matched to permanent supportive housing. So you can see all those people would be our permanent supportive housing because of, again, based on the score. And that's also something I think as a group, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to. Is that scoring still makes sense? Is that, what we think it should be still? Those types of things. And then user is the person who entered them into HMIS. City is the city they're located in. And address, again, you'll see some of these have an actual physical address, which is kind of what happened when we first started. And then you'll see the newer ones. We have Cornerstone Rescue Mission, Bishop Dudley, St. Francis House. We really kind of switched to, because again, some people might not know 409 Northwestern Avenue is this shelter, so that's kind of why we changed that address line item to where they're actually sleeping. The name of the shelter, that they're in the park, that they're in their vehicle, those types of things. So that's kind of what we changed that to. Because you'll see some of these with the actual physical address are dated clear back to 2018. So, and then over here, if you hover over additional information, what's in that is their pregnancy status and what their current living situation is that they gave you. So we have options to add different things or more things into this additional information box if we need to. And the nice thing, anytime you see one of these, this means that you can sort this list by that column. So I could go in here and sort them by their score, making the smallest number at the top or the biggest number at the top. I can go in here and sort this by the date they came into the system instead of by their score. And I know sometimes in our region calls we'll do this and say, who's been on this list the longest? This person's been on here since March of 17. So it might be time to either, do we know we still have contact with them? Do we know where they are? Do we, so those are always things to keep in mind. We can sort it by the number in their household. We can sort it any of these columns that have those little pyramid things next to them. We can sort the list by that. The other thing, probably the way that we sort most often is by the regions, of course. So if we're in the Region 1 conference call, we can just click on Region 1 and click search, and it will pull up only the people in Region 1. So, and I know Davis works with regions 2 and 3, so they look at those regions. Mm-hmm. We can pull by the chronic, we can pull by subpopulation, so we have options to really sort this list however we want to. The other nice thing about this is once we have, if you're the region coordinator for your region, you can pull this list out in an Excel spreadsheet. So if I click on that Excel option, so down here on my screen, now I can open the file and I have all of that information for that region in an Excel spreadsheet. So that's the other nice thing about HMIS is that it's really, you can pull those lists out, you can work with them, you can really, look at the data however you need to.
Denise, we have another question. And
Sure.
They're asking, what is the cost of having access to HMIS?
So the cost to our users is there's a user fee per user per month. And so right now our user fee is $82.12 per user per month. And depending on, our regional coordinators and, some of the service providers obviously are already in the system for their own programs. If they have a COC or an ESG program, they're required to be in the system. So we can give them access to this work group and there's not an extra fee for that. Or if we have, excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat here. Or if we have an agency that, like the Community Health Center in Rapid, who sees a lot of the homeless population and would be have access to do some of those assessments and enroll people into coordinated entry. Because sometimes we have, certain members of the population that phone call to our 800 number is not always the best for them to be able to do that. So we do have some physical access points around the state. So if some of those agencies are working directly with coordinated entry, we can also talk about, if we can cover that fee with our coordinated entry grant and some of those types of things.
So if agencies are interested, we just really need to have a conversation with them to kind of understand, what they would like to do and how it could work, and we can have a discussion about, what the costs are associated and how we could try to make a plan and how that will fit into our system. So it's really, if folks are interested, we just need to have a conversation with you, and just so we understand too what you're hoping to do. So it's about 10 to 3. And at 3, we want to start our next session. So this has been a great session, great presentation by Denise, and great participation, folks on the call. Thank you so much for your chats and for speaking up. Is there a last chance for a question or anything like that before we're going to need to probably take a break and then have our next session at 3. So last chance. Is any last questions or comments?
Yeah, I wanted to get into some of the reporting functions of the system also, but we can have those discussions too in our regional breakouts tomorrow. When we do that, we can kind of go into, I'll show Davis the region that he's handling tomorrow. I'll show him how to do that for you guys so he can show you. But yeah, I mean, because there's reporting functions in here to pull data directly from coordinated entry. There's a lot of under standard reports. You can go in and really look at the clients in the program. You can look at their demographics. So there are a lot of reports already in this system that we also have the option. We have Data Explorer in the system, so we can create our own reports. But these are some of those reports that everybody has access to, and they're readily easy to access. You just put in a date and pull the data. So
cool.
But we can talk about that when we get into some of our region breakouts tomorrow. But yeah, don't hesitate, you guys, to reach out to me. Truly, email, call, whatever. I'm happy to talk about coordinated entry, talk about HMIS. We are gonna, again, as Davis mentioned, we'll have some HMIS videos coming in our library soon. So coordinated entry, this whole workflow, kind of what I just did with you guys, will be part of that video. So
yeah, we think that that's going to be a great learning tool, and then you guys will have access to those items when you need them, in a way that you can search and look at particular questions, how to do a particular step like the workflow or whatever else in HMIS. So we're super excited about that.
And I think for people that are staying on for the next session, Davis, they can just mute their phone and go on a quick break and not have to log out, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think you have to log out. So
okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. It was awesome.